They're asking the Congress to consolidate 6 federal agencies, effectively closing the Commerce Department. Take a listen to what's going on in D.C.
We could consolidate them all into one department with one website, one phone number, one mission, helping American businesses succeed. That's a big idea.
Let's bring in our Friday mega panel, Ari Melber from The Nation, MSNBC contributor Krystal, and we welcome for the first time the political editor from townhall.com, Guy Benson. Krystal, what is the appropriate hazing for a new mega panelist, especially one as handsome and reportedly intelligent as this one?
You could ask him what animal he would be if he'd be any animal.
That's your first question.
Oh, boy. Maybe an eagle, the whole America thing going, and I've always wanted to be able to fly.
Nice.
Okay. Good answer, right, Krystal?
It looks a little more like a panda to me.
Oh,
but that's just, I'm free associated.
I lived 7 years in Hong Kong. That works.
True?
It does. Yeah, absolutely true. Yep.
Are we doing Hong Kong?
Is there something there?
Now I can never run for president or something.
Yeah,
Right?
well, you better not be able to speak Chinese, I'll tell you that much.
Just a tiny
It'll work
bit.
right against you. So obviously the political aspect of consolidation and size reduction, and I'll start with you, Guy, is an appealing framing for anything. You say we're going to make things more efficient. But I'm interested in your perspective when you watch this president in this context.
Well, I could give you the Republican talking points, which I know you don't want, so I won't.
Okay.
You know, I read some of the reaction from Republicans on Capitol Hill today, and it was a little disappointing to me, because if this were an idea being put forward by a Republican president, all the Republicans would be behind it, because it's common sense. Now, is it window dressing? Yes. Is it a fraction of one drop in a giant bucket? Yes. It's actually 1/400th of the amount that the president has asked the debt to be increased today, the debt ceiling to be increased. So it's, you know, it's not really anything significant.
It's almost a publicity stunt. Not quite.
It is. That's what he's trying to do here.
Right.
But the underlying idea isn't bad, so I don't see any reason to oppose it.
Right. Go ahead.
Two things. Number one, the Office of Management and Budget is a serious math-driven entity that says it'll save $3 billion. $3 billion is $3 billion. It's not a lot of money in the federal budget, but that's real. Number two, look, you heard the president, one website. I mean, this is small bore. So it's fine, but I think the scale of it is small, and the larger context for that, and this is where I'll end, is you have a Senate that won't let anything get done without a supermajority. So we're going to see more small-bore executive actions. If you don't like that, you need a Senate that'll work with the president.
Krystal, you get the last word. But again, we're about to launch a 30 million jobs tour next week on this show to establish a baseline for what the jobs problem in this country is. And as you know, I get upset when solutions come through that claim to solve the jobs problem or whatever it is, but ignore the actual size of the problem. Your thoughts on this particular structure?
Well, I think the way that you all have framed it is exactly right. I mean, it is political, it is window dressing, not to say that there's not some substance there, not to say it's not a good idea, but this idea was originally put forward in last year's State of the Union speech. And the president, if you'll remember that speech, that's when he said, this is our Sputnik moment. And if this is the best that we can do to address our Sputnik moment, it is a sad statement on our political system. And I think Ari hit the nail on the head. It's money in politics, and it's the filibuster, which doesn't require a constitutional amendment. It just requires the Senate to change its rules. Otherwise, it doesn't matter if Republicans or Democrats have control of the Senate. No matter who has it, if they don't have a filibuster-proof majority, nothing is going to get done.
Which the good news is that a constitutional amendment requires about the same thing as beating a filibuster. So we'll see how that goes.
66, no big difference.
Very true.
The panel stays. Coming up, one of the biggest victories yet in the fight to get money out of politics. Our specialist joins the mega panel next.
We ain't gonna take it. Oh, we're not gonna take it anymore.
Well, as we reported here on the show last week, the New York City Council has passed a resolution opposing corporate personhood, a significant and symbolic gesture in support of getting money out. And joining our friends out west in Los Angeles, now making the 2 largest cities in America, the first 2 cities in America, to declare indeed that they do not believe, as a matter of principle, that corporations are people, despite the Supreme Court ruling. And our specialist today is one of the folks who was boots on the ground making it happen here in New York. We are privileged to welcome New York City Council member Melissa Mark Viverito. Melissa? Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
How hard was this to do? Educate us a little bit. Have other towns wanted to do these sorts of resolutions? How hard are they to do?
Well, basically, the success of New York City enacting this resolution was really out of the grassroots movement that is happening nationwide, which is really expressing its discontent with this ruling and asking for an amendment. So we heard what Los Angeles did. We know the success of this movement nationally, going across cities and states to really educate people on this decision and the need to really overturn it. So there were those of us that have formed part of the Progressive Caucus.
Was it difficult?
Not at all. I mean, I think in terms of convincing our colleagues, it was not. We are an overwhelming Democratic majority in this council, and so we understand the importance of getting corporations out of politics. We have the strongest, if not the strongest, campaign finance law in the state, in the country, is in New York City.
And that, I'm going to give one last question on exactly that, and I'll release you to the panel. So New York City has, as you mentioned, some of the strongest campaign finance laws in America, and yet a billionaire was able to bypass those laws and spend $100 million in his campaign, not because of Citizens United, but because of Buckley Vallejo, which said money is speech. Are you concerned that these resolutions need to address both corporations, people, and money and speech such that we don't end up with the unintended consequence of transferring financing responsibility from corporations to nonprofits like the Koch brothers, the NRA, unions, the Sierra Club, and independent billionaires? It would be rather frustrating to do this and realize you just put somebody else with money in charge.
Well, obviously, the issue is, as you mentioned, with regards to the legislation and the laws, is that it is a voluntary program, right? So our campaign finance program, which we would want people to be part of, is voluntary. So then you have an issue like Mayor Bloomberg, where he can independently finance his campaign.
Only if money is speech.
Right, exactly. So that's what I'm saying.
Which is not addressed in Citizens United.
Right. So I guess, but we want to have more laws like the one in New York City to really encourage people to be part of it, to be part of a financing program that caps the amount of money that you can spend on these elections, and it limits the amount of contributions that you can get as well.
Guy, I know that you have an issue with some of this whole conversation, and when you're the one person we haven't heard from on this. So what are your thoughts quickly?
I guess
and a question.
The question is, where do you draw the line? Because Citizens United benefited, of course, corporations, but also labor unions. And I don't like what labor unions often say and do, but my instinct isn't to say you shouldn't be allowed to pay to say it. My instinct is, let's have more people pay to say that they disagree. Who does qualify as a person? And why is it not a problem if there's a multi-billionaire who can use his money, but a corporation can't?
Well, there's an issue here about disclosure as well. That's what we're talking about, is that when you talk about corporations, they are not individual people. Members of a union are individual people that have money deducted from their paychecks in order to sponsor and support candidates that they believe in. There's a difference to me.
So what you're arguing, actually, that you are in favor of money in politics when it comes from nonprofits like unions and the Koch brothers, but you're against it when it's corporations?
No, it's about disclosure. It's about knowing where your money is coming from.
Isn't it still a quid pro quo? If I can still defund you, as the banks threatened to do in the bank reform debate, as the healthcare, we spent $600 million from healthcare, making sure health reform wasn't health reform. We spent $600 million in bank reform to make sure. Isn't the issue the quid pro quo, not whether we like or don't like whose money it is?
It is not. I don't believe. Yes, there is an issue of quid pro quo, but the thing is, it is also about to me, it's about the disclosure and the transparency. I do believe in limiting the amount of money that is in politics. That's why I participate in a campaign finance program, and I would encourage others to do the same. But it is about knowing also where this money is coming from and holding people accountable to that. When you don't know where the money is coming from, that's where really you have a real major issue in the pollution of politics and government in this country.
Well, it's wonderful to have you involved in this entire conversation. Krystal, question.
Councilwoman, first of all, I am one of your constituents, so thank you for representing me.
Thank you.
And I wanted to know, did you coordinate with the Occupy Wall Street movement at all? And I also was curious on your thoughts. I know you're a member of the Progressive Caucus, but as someone who is also a member of government and wants to make sure that the city is safe and that all residents are respected, how did you feel about the mayor's approach to dealing with Occupy Wall Street?
Well, I was very concerned and continue to be concerned about how that went about and about also how the media was impacted. Media was prevented from being there when the raid happened on Occupy Wall Street. I believe that when you talk about this resolution, when you talk about the movement that is building nationally, it is tapping into that sentiment that Occupy Wall Street has exhibited, where people really feel that there is a disconnect between government and the majority of the population in terms of the interests and the needs. I represent a community of color. It is Latino, African American. It is a low-income community, and the Citizens United really impacts negatively, particularly communities like the one that I represent, where our voice needs to be at the table table. Decisions need to be made that really take our voice into account, and that's why I feel so strongly about this issue. The Progressive Caucus was all the sponsors of the were all sponsors of the resolution. We had the support of our speaker. It was a strong message that came out of New York City, and we hope others will join this cause and this movement as well.
Here, Ari, go ahead.
You're obviously a leader on these issues. People who watch this show, who watch what Dylan's doing with Get Money Out, are going to look to the local efforts that you and some of your colleagues and people in California have put forth to help grow this issue. But something that you said sounded a little off to me, to my ear. And that was, you said, well, we have all these Democrats on the council, so it was easy to do. But Barack Obama's a Democrat, and he's very good at raising small donations. And what I see in conversations among progressives and liberals and people who otherwise are for reform is a touting of small donations, a touting of fundraising as equivalent to political strength. When, as you know, for many decades, people in both parties ran for president under the voluntary system. A lot of people thought it worked well. Aren't you concerned that, to the point about whether it's easy to convince Democrats, the #1 Democrat in the country, President Barack Obama, is comfortable raising $500 million rather than doing something to get voluntary funding back in?
I really would like to see the voluntary, and I know that part of the national conversation that is happening to really get other municipalities to do the same is really one of those, is about getting a more of a federal voluntary program of campaign finance reform, and I think that that's imperative, and I think that New York City can serve as a model.
But that wasn't his question. His question is, where is the lead Democrat in America? Your suggestion was, and I personally disagree with it, which is that it's a partisan issue, as if the Democrats or Republicans have a different stake, which is for a different conversation. But if we were to take your narrative, which is that the Democrats have a bias towards this, again, we'll set that aside, where is the lead Democrat in the country on this issue, or for that matter, Democratic leadership in the Congress?
No, I believe, I hear what you're saying. I believe that there are going to be hopefully would be some Republicans that may agree with this issue as well. And yes, I would like to hear our president speak more firmly and strongly on this matter, without a doubt. In New York City, we are, for the most part, in terms of the legislative body that we represent, is made up of people that really understand this issue, and it was easy to convince them. It's not reflective of all the Democrats nationwide, and clearly we want to see the lead Democrat take a more active stance. I personally would. I'm not going to speak on behalf of all my colleagues.
We're all talking for ourselves here.
So clearly, I would like to see that, because I am a real progressive. I'm very much a lefty, as people would say, and I'm not scared to say that or ashamed to say it. And we want to see much more done on that front. So I would agree with you that I really would like to see a stronger stance on that issue. And
I'd love to have you come back, because if you look at the history of amendments, obviously 18 passed on a justice narrative, not as a left-right narrative. The ERA was attempted as a lefty narrative, and it doomed it. And I just feel like there's a risk on this undertaking that'll be used as a mechanism for a power game between the left and the right, which will guarantee it won't actually happen, which would be a fun conversation.
I agree with you.
Thank you so much. And again, thank you for tolerating our questions. And at the same time, don't misinterpret it as anything but incredible gratitude for the work that you are doing, because you are advancing what I believe is the most significant issue in this country today.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity to be here, and as an MSNBC junkie, I more than welcome another invitation in the future.
Okay, good. You'll be back. Thank you very much. The panel goes away. We are proud to welcome Guy Benson to the panel. Very well done today. You aced the initiation question. What kind of animal would you be? He said eagle. That's a good answer. We hope to see more of you, Guy. Ari, always a pleasure.
Thank you.
And Krystal, you are the keeper of the code of the new panelist now. You are the question, whatever that means. Anyway, we'll talk to you soon. Straight ahead here, Sir William Geist of Vanderbilt.